All right, so this is chapter 10. We're going to read through to chapter 12. And we already know that Despero doesn't really seem so concerned right now because he's so in love with the princess. But he should be concerned because he's going to meet the very honored head mouse and the rest of the mouse council and await his trial for his crimes. And remember, his crimes were talking to the princess, hanging out with humans, being seen by humans, and just in general, they didn't really love him because he was weird. Like, he was a smaller mouse, had big ears, didn't like doing mouse things. So that's what we're going to see what happens in, we're going to see what happens in chapter 10 with the Mouse Council. The entire mouse community, as instructed by the most very honored head mouse, had gathered behind the wall of the castle ballroom. The members of the Mouse Council sat atop 3 bricks piled high. And spread out before them was every mouse, old and young, foolish and wise, who lived in the castle. They were all waiting for Despero. "Make way," said Furlough. "Here he is, I've got him, make way." Furlough pushed through the crowd of mice. Despero clung to his brother's tail. "There he is," Mice whispered. "There he is. He's so small. They say he was born with his eyes open." Some of the mice pulled away from Despero in disgust, and others, thrill-seeker, reached out and touched him with a whisker or a paw. The princess put a finger on him. "They say he sat at the foot of the king." "It's simply not done," came the distinctive voice of Despero's Aunt Florence. Make way, shouted Furlough. "I have him right here. I have Despero Tilling, who's been called to sit with the Mouse Council." He led Despero to the front of the room. "Honored members of the Mouse Council," shouted Furlough, "I have brought you Despero Tilling as you requested, to sit with you." He looked over his shoulder at Despero. "Let go of me," said Furlough. Despero dropped Furlough's tail. He looked up at the members of the Mouse Council. His father met his gaze, and then shook his head, and he looked away. Despero turned and faced the sea of mice. "To the dungeon!" cried a voice. "Straight to the dungeon with him!" Despero's head, which had been full of such delightful phrases, such as "happily ever after" and "lovely ears" and "I honor you," suddenly cleared. "Straight to the dungeon!" another voice shouted. "Enough!" said the most very honored head mouse. "This trial will be conducted in an orderly fashion. We will act civilized." He cleared his throat. He said to Despero, "Son, turn and look at me." Despero turned. He looked up into the head mouse's eyes. They were dark eyes, deep and sad and frightened, and he looked into them. Despero's heart thudded twice, then twice again. "Despero Tilling," said the head mouse. "Yes, sir," said Despero. "We, the 14 members of the Mouse Council, have discussed your behavior. First, we will give you a chance to defend yourself against these rumors of your egregious acts. Did you or did you not sit at the foot of a human king?" "I did," said Despero. "But I was listening to the music, sir. I was there to hear the song that the king was singing." "To hear the what?" "The song, sir. He was singing a song about a deep purple falling over a sleepy garden wall." The head mouse shook his head. Whatever you are talking about is beside the point. The question is this and only this. Did you sit at the foot of the human king?" "I did, sir." The community of mice shifted their tails and paws and whiskers. They waited. "And did you allow the human girl, the princess, to touch you?" "Her name is P." "Never mind her name. Did you allow her to touch you?" "Yes, sir," said Despero. "I let her touch me. It felt good." A gasp arose from the assembled mice. Despero heard his mother's voice. "Mon Dieu, it is not the end of the world. It was a touch. What of it?" "It's simply not done," came Aunt Florence's voice from the crowd. "To the dungeon!" said a mouse in the front row. "Silence!" roared the very honored head mouse. "Silence!" He looked down at Despero. "Do you, Despero Tilling, understand the sacred, never-to-be-broken rules of conduct for being a mouse?" "Yes, sir," said Despero. "I guess so, but did you break them?" "Yes, sir," said Despero. He raised his voice. "But I broke the rules for good reason, because of the music and because of love." "Love," said the head mouse. "Oh, cripes," said Furlough. "Here we go." "I love her, sir," said Despero. "We are not here to talk about love. This is a trial, not about love. This trial is about you being a mouse," shouted the very honored head mouse from high atop his bricks, "and not acting like one." "Yes, sir," said Despero. "I know." No, I don't think that you do know, and because you do not deny the charges, you must be punished. You are to be sent, as ancient castle mouse law decrees, to the dungeon. You are being sent to the rats." "That's right," shouted a mouse from the crowd. "That's the ticket! The dungeon! The rats!" The dungeon! The rats! Despero's small heart sank all the way to the tip of his tail. There would be no light in the dungeon, no stained glass windows, no library, no books. There would be no Princess P. "But first," said the most very honored head mouse, "we will give you the chance to renounce your actions. We will allow you to go to the dungeon with a pure heart. Renounce? Repent. Say you are sorry. Sorry that you sat at the foot of the human king. Say you are sorry you allowed the human princess to touch you. Say you regret these actions." Despero felt hot, and then cold, and then hot again. Renounce her? Renounce the princess? "Mon Dieu," shouted his mother. "Son, do not act a fool. Renounce, repent." "What say you, Despero Tilling?" I say, no," whispered Despero Tilling. "What?" said the head mouse. "No," said Despero Tilling, and this time he did not whisper the word. "I am not sorry. I will not renounce my actions. I love her. I love the princess." There was a bellow of collective outrage. The whole of the mouse community surged towards Despero. The mice seemed to become one angry body with hundreds of tails and thousands of whiskers and one huge, hungry mouth opening and closing, saying over and over again, "To the dungeon! To the dungeon! To the dungeon!" The words pounded through Despero's body with each beat of his heart. "Very well," said the most very honored head mouse. "You will die, then, with a black heart. Bring out the thread." Despero marveled at his own bravery. He admired his own defiance. And then, reader, he fainted. Chapter 11. The Thread Master Cometh. When Despero came to, he heard the drum. His father was beating a drum that had been more boom and less tat. Together, Lester and the drum produced an ominous sound that went something like this. Boom, 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 tat. Boom, 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 tat. "Make way for the thread!" cried a mouse who was pushing a wooden spool of red thread through the crowd. "Make way for the thread!" Boom, 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 tat, went the drum. "To the dungeon!" shouted the mice. Despero lay on his back, blinking his eyes. How, he wondered, had things gone so terribly wrong? Wasn't it a good thing to love? In the storybook, love was a very good thing, because the knight loved the fair maiden. He was able to rescue her. They lived happily ever after. It said so in the book. They were the last words on the page, happily ever after. Despero was certain that he had read exactly those words time and time again. Lying on the floor with the drum beating and the mice shouting and the threadmaster calling out, "Make way! Make way!" Despero had a sudden chilling thought. Had some other mouse eaten the words that spoke the truth? Did the knight and the fair maiden really not live happily ever after? Reader, do you believe that there is such a thing as happily ever after? Or, like Despero, have you too begun to question the possibility of happy endings? "Happily ever after," whispered Despero. "Happily ever after," he said again, as the spool of thread came to a stop beside him. "The thread, the thread, the thread," murmured the mice. "I'm sorry," said the mouse behind the spool, "but I have to ask you to stand up. I have to do my job." Despero got slowly to his feet. "On your hind legs, please," said the threadmaster. "It's the rules." Despero stood on his hind legs. "Thank you," said the mouse. "I appreciate it." While Despero watched, the threadmaster unwound a length of red thread from the spool and tied it in a loop. "Just enough for the neck," muttered the mouse. "No more, no less. That's what the last threadmaster taught me. Enough thread for the neck." He looked up at Despero and then back at the loop of thread. "And you, my friend, have a small neck." The threadmaster raised his arms and put them around Despero's neck. He leaned in close, and Despero could smell celery. He could feel the threadmaster's breath in his ears as he worked on tightening the thread. "Isn't she beautiful?" the threadmaster whispered. "What?" said Despero. "Shh! Is the princess beautiful? The Princess P?" "Yes." "She is lovely, but beyond all imagining," said Despero. "Just right," the threadmaster said. He drew back. He nodded again. "A lovely princess just so, like a fairy tale, and you love her. as a knight loves a maiden. You love her with courtly love, a love that is based on bravery and courtesy and honor and devotion, just so." "How do you know that?" Despero said. "How do you know about fairy tales?" "Shh!" The mouse leaned in close, and Despero smelled celery again, green and alive. "Be brave, friend," whispered the Threadmaster. "Be brave for the princess." And then he stepped back and turned and shouted, "Fellow mice, the thread has been tied, the thread has been knotted." A roar of approval went up from the crowd. Despero squared his shoulders. He had made a decision. He would do as the Threadmaster had suggested. He would be brave for the princess, even if, reader, could it be true, there was no such thing as happily ever after. And that was the 2 chapters for the day. So what we basically learned was Despero really does love the princess. He refuses to say that he does not love her. He refuses to lie when the council asks him the questions. And so Despero also winds up making a little bit of a friend with the Threadmaster, who kind of believes in him. He told him to keep being true to himself, and he said, "Of course you love the princess. You love her as if you're courting her, which means you love her as if you're kind of like dating her or looking to marry her." And Despero is amazed at how he knows that, but the Threadmaster refuses to say. And those are our chapters. That's our summary. I hope you guys enjoyed it.